I just quickly introductory stuff before I get into the content. We're going to finish. We don't have very much to do in the first chapter and start the second. So I have added these things. When we get to chapter 2, this is chapter 2 from the previous textbook. I'm going to probably have to sort of marry the two PowerPoints to make sure we have the illustrations, because these are all about biochemistry. The illustrations probably will complement each other, but some are better than others. And they also have animations that sometimes are useful, which I'm not seeing as many of in the Welsh whole text. And you'll see that'll be a recurrent theme, particularly when we get to muscles and nerves. The Marib text, and so you don't have to go out and purchase the text. I'll supply it with the PowerPoints, and I'll have all the animations and things like that. So that's taken care of. But these are going to be helpful. The skin will be helpful for both here and in lab, since we have a skin section. The tissues you cover in lab. So I've added this to your thing, and here I can show them to you. Basically, I've outlined, because the chapters for tissues and skin are pretty much universal. They haven't changed a great deal over the course of time. And so you have a lot of the stuff you probably, bless you, probably would have covered with regard to epithelial tissues. It's from another textbook. If there's any figure, which I haven't gone over and edited them out, they're from previous editions. Ignore if it says figure 8.2 or 8.2a. But all those things, this is what we cover. And so you're covered. I don't cover the lab stuff with you, but you tell me you did epithelia and simple, stratified, and squamous, and cuboidal, and where they are, and pseudostratified. You can see I have nucleus wrong, but forgive me. Okay, stratified, etc. You might find this to be helpful in your studies for laboratory. You don't have to thank me, but no, I don't want to give you the PayPal number or anything like that. They frown on that here. I'm not supposed to ask for any donations or anything like that. But the Venmo thing is, don't say that. I'm joking. Didn't mean it. That was me. But not only, there's a special today. Not only do you get it for tissues, that's right, you get it for skin, all for free. Unfortunately. So there, and I use the skin as well, skin, its derivatives, the integumentary system, all those wonderful cells, the names you do have to know, like keratinocytes and melanocytes and Langerhans cells and Merkel cells. Love those. Really, really cool. All the different strata and this is part for me, and I'm sure Dr. Robbins will cover this in lab. Now that you've all been exposed to the lab by this time and are busy writing your lab reports, if you haven't done them already, right? Of course. Have fun. You don't have to thank me. It's all part of the service. I do it for everybody. And I don't have them for all the chapters, but I probably have them for more AP2 chapters. And if you don't, and if I, A, don't teach AP2, and B, you don't have me for AP2, just ask. That's why the good Lord made email. Even if, look, down the road, whoever's instructing you and whatever they're instructing you, I mean, the fact that you've been with us before means we are familiar with you. I mean, the goal of the exercise, at least here, certainly through our department, is for you guys to succeed. It's very important. So anything I can do to help that, maybe if you're unclear with something, if you're in a nursing program or another program, and there's a concept that maybe I can help you explain, shoot me an email. Okay? Come over and visit. Happy to do it. Oh God, there's still text messages. I'll get to them later. Nevertheless, let's begin. So, I mean, we kind of ended, and the one thing we did not get to as yet was this, and basically really to define homeostasis better and understand really how it works. And there's not a whole lot. Homeostasis is such an important thing. To be able to maintain the internal environment more or less around, and you can see a lot of it plays because of water. How do we know if there's a derangement? That's what the vital signs are about. You know what the basics, and you should. 37 degrees Celsius is certainly, I know it's 98.6, but it's a science class. We do Celsius. And now how they do it when you get into a hospital or a clinical environment has to do with that. Whatever protocols they're following. They're there. So so blood pressure, the consistent blood pressure number you hear that's quote unquote normal, or the base normal, is 120/80. There's variations. You'll see that top number called the systole. It kind of goes up a little bit. So you get to somebody who's like my age, my doctor would not like to see 140/90. The bottom number, the diastolic, is the big player. You'll come to understand that's the one. He's happy when mine's no more than 85. By the way, I take a couple of blood pressure medicines anyway. And a lot of people do when they get to an age. Your blood vessels are very elastic and stretchy. They lose a stretch as we get older. That's why we see more high blood pressure, even just as a process of getting older. That's part of it. So pulse, normal resting pulse rate for most individuals, and it really it doesn't matter about the age, between 60 and 80. It's a brilliant measure. It's one of the best measure for overall fitness, particular cardiac fitness. It's a point I reiterate again when I talk about the heart. If we do AP2 or I do a laboratory with it, so easy to do. Just sitting there like you are now, taking your pulse, take your radial pulse, measure it for 10 seconds with your fingers. Super easy. Multiply by 6. Okay, that's really a good measure. That's there. Some people normally are a little bit lower, particularly if you're very fit. We have a lot of athletes here. You're all young folks. You should all be in that number or lower. When someone has 50, it's not. If it's significant for someone like me, if I had a pulse rate of 50, they would have a fancy name for it. They call bradycardia. Okay. Then your heart's not working as efficiently as it should. It would be very unusual. Where a lot of you, think of that as the reserve that you have. And when we talk about that, and we talk about it a little bit in this class, we talk about muscles and aerobic exercise and things like that. That's part of what you do when you do cardio fitness. You want to get your heart rate up. And so you really challenge to expand the reserve. Just off the top of my head. And respirations, depending, 12 to 20. Some people breathe more rapidly, 12 to 15, whatever. And it depends on, again, but if it's less than 12, it would be bad. Certainly, if it's more than 20, it would be bad. So be familiar with those. Those are your measures. Those are called the vital signs. And effectively, they're a quick snapshot if there's something wrong with homeostasis. The control center for all of these that creates these set points, okay, are inevitably part of your nervous system and your endocrine system. When you respond very, very quickly to a change, it's your nervous system. When you respond more slowly, it's your endocrine system. A lot of times that rapid change will be your nervous system, and it will send a companion signal to your endocrine system and go, okay, make sure we get this change in order. And when I say nervous system is fractions of a second. Endocrine can be seconds, minutes, hours, days, etc. So there's a wide range. So when I say it's slower, it does by no means does it mean slow. If somebody tries to cut you off in a car, you after you make the adjustment and maybe pull off the side of the road, you feel yourself racing. That's your endocrine system, not your nervous system. That's that outpouring from your adrenal glands of epinephrine, okay, and norepinephrine, known as adrenaline and noradrenaline. Previously, we get to that in this class at the very end. It's called your autonomic nervous system. That's the last chapter that we really take a good look at. At least what I'll be doing here in AP1. So those are your control centers. We have receptors everywhere. And there are different kinds of receptors. There's photoreceptors for light, for vision. You're hearing me with mechanical receptors. We'll go over all these when we get to nervous system. Temperature receptors, all of those things are there. And they are all basically providing that information in some way, shape, or form, typically directly to the control center. And then that control center will, if there's deviation from that set point, we utilize an effector, as you can see here, a muscle or a gland, some change that's going to keep the environment where it's supposed to be. So effectively, it's all, the reason I skip through that diagram is I don't get anything out of it. So if I skip through something like that, it's just time and space. There was something in there I had a comment on, I forgot, I'm sorry. Stable, homeostatic, self-regulating. Not this tab PowerPoint. Okay, it's all negative feedback with limited exceptions. So again, memorize the exceptions. So negative everything. And why do they call it negative? This is a really good explanation that I hadn't seen before, and it really summarizes it very, very quickly in a phrase. Negative because it responds to the change, moves the variable in the opposite direction. So if it goes up, then it shouldn't. It brings it back down quickly. If it goes down, it brings it back up. It's negative from where it wasn't supposed to be. So to understand, and so they're continuous, they're tiny. We do them all the time, all the time. And so that it really is everything. And so if you came here and you grabbed a snack on the way in, or you had a sip of a drink that had some sugar content into it, immediately upon ingesting that, a little bit's going to get through in your mouth. There's a ton of blood vessels. It's going to get into your system. Very, very shortly, you're going to release insulin to bring, assuming that you have the capability, meaning you're not a type 1 diabetic, to release that insulin, okay, and start to lower that sugar. It's going to lower that sugar. And a lot of times with insulin, it overshoots a little bit. So shortly thereafter, your pancreas, where the insulin was released next door, is going to send a signal to your liver by something called glucagon, another hormone, and tell the liver, you better put out a little more sugar so we don't get like that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff means you're a pre-diabetic when you get sharp. Living systems don't make sharp turns. So like whoosh. If you're spiking up and spiking back down, that means there's an abnormality in that system. Help! What are you doing to me? Let me share that with them. In class. There's a chance my 5-year-old grandson has poison ivy. So there's a text chain that's annoying. That's the one outside of DC. Help me. I'm busy. Don't be a doctor and have children and grandchildren. It just comes with the territory. Nevertheless, okay, that's sort of something that really summarizes how it works. Calcium. We use calcium all the time. If your blood has a little less calcium, it grabs out a bone. Bone's where it's stored. It's like a savings account, the bank. It pulls a little bit out. We need more. If we have a little excess, let's say you ingested a calcium meal, you grabbed a couple of Tums because you want it as a calcium supplement, and there's excess, boom, puts it right back into the bone. Subtle changes we don't perceive. As long as it's working, as long as the system's working, we don't have to worry about it. The same is true for salt, it's a calcium, temperature, whether we perspire or shiver, and you'll see a zillion of those things. Prevent sudden severe changes, and they're just giving you the same ones, and I don't. If you get something out of these, whenever I see PowerPoints that are filled with graphics and numbers and names like that I can't even read without a magnifying glass, I ignore them. I don't know. Maybe you do the one and because they always have it in the PowerPoint in the lab with all the terminology like frontal, occipital, temporal. Did you have that slide with all the anatomical terminology or regions? Yes, no? You did that? There's a ton of stuff on one slide. Very annoying. Okay, but that's standard. They put all that stuff in. You know, you have abdominal, you have gluteal, you have all those areas. Brachial, I always called it the arm, forearm, antebrachial. I teach that course too occasionally. So get used to that. So the exceptions are positive. So much so, they are dramatic, even though they are relatively rapid. Every A&P textbook has the same two examples because they're major: blood clotting and the vaginal birth process, delivering a baby. That's the two major ones. There are others. You will see in female repro phys, we see a fair amount of those, such as like the onset of menstruation. There's aspects of positive feedback that go on with that. There are some aspects of positive feedback that go on with ovulation as well. I don't want to get into those at this point in time. We do reprophysiology at the end of AP2. And most of the time, I mean, that's really getting into a lot of specifics, that most instructors don't at this level. So it's relatively hopefully, when we talk about blood clotting, it's really important. Any deviations in that, typically they underscore hereditary factors. Hemophilia would be a variation on that, where the blood doesn't clot, because your blood clots all the time. People don't realize it's much less about accidents and cutting yourself or scraping your knee than it is about what's going on inside the roadways. You learn that in part of the blood unit that's there. But what happens is when some defect occurs that causes the platelets, which are these little guys in your bloodstream, that are just little packets of clotting factors to aggregate. It releases those clotting factors, and boom, your blood starts to clot. And the more it clots, the more it releases those aggregating factors, because those platelets keep coming together. And it will continue to do that until the clot forms completely to deal with the defect. It's a good thing. No, it's not going to, I mean, if someone has a terrible accident, motor vehicle accident, something ruptured inside, and they're bleeding internally, it's not going to do that. They're going to require significant attention. But for most of us, it's just fine. You're going to hear a lot, pressure stops all bleeding. It's not talking about that major thing. It might be a cut. Even if it's a cut, might need stitches. Get pressure on that, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. When we say by the clock, what that means, try that sometimes. Imagine there's a cut. I'm going to push down on that with like a paper towel or a gauze pad for 5 minutes. Don't look at it. Have somebody time it. Then say, okay, that's about 5 minutes. It's probably going to be about 2 minutes. Time goes, when you have to do something like that, it goes by relatively much slower than you think. Kind of interesting. So when you say by the clock, it really means that. I mean, that's just sitting there doing nothing for 5 minutes, but holding something for 10 minutes, not easy. So all of that is part of it. The change is actually, we call it self-amplifying, cascading. You'll see a lot of terms. When we do the clotting factors, you'll see it a little bit more graphically. Very short-lived or short-lived. Okay, temporarily unstable. Okay, but eventually they become part of homeostasis because you're stopping the bleeding. In childbirth, normally when a muscular structure is stretched, like a baby's head beginning to present itself most frequently, it responds reflexively. It contracts and pushes it back. Here, it's just the opposite. You get more profound contractions that are able to eventually expel the baby and complete the process of birth. So that's the other one. That's that. What happens is once you start to get that release of the chemical's name is oxytocin, when it's made genetically, it's called pitocin. That's why it's used to induce labor. There's a difference. Oxytocin is naturally occurring. Pitocin, it's a fine distinction. Okay, they're the same thing, except one's made in the lab. It's a relatively simple chain of 9 amino acids. That's fairly easy to make in the lab. Short chain things are easy to make in the lab. Long chain things are a little hard. And we'll talk about a little bit about those things as this course goes on, mentioning some of the GMO type medications. The first one of which is much more complex and longer is insulin. Back in 1977, they made what's called Humulin, based on analyzing the human chain of insulin and manufactured in the laboratory as we began to get the onset of genetic engineering. That was there. And so those are the two biggies, and the other ones that I mentioned are part of it. Very useful diagram for you to understand a little bit of, I guess, sort of how things interrelate. First nugget here is your alimentary canal is really, it's a hole, it's a tunnel that goes through you. When I eat or drink something, it's not inside of me per se. That is a line tunnel. You learned about some of those cells. They're called stratified squamous non-keratinizing, at the entry and exit points, and maybe some changes like simple columnar when you get to stomach and small intestine, large intestine. Ringing a bell? Those names? Okay. Those lining cells prevent stuff from coming in and facilitate it from being absorbed when it's supposed to, but it's not inside of you. Moreover, big problems occur because it's not a sterile environment. That's why when an appendix ruptures, when a bowel tumor bursts, when an ovarian tumor bursts, when there's an ectopic pregnancy and a tube bursts, it causes major problems. It causes this, peritonitis. Those are non-sterile passageways that have then magically opened up, unfortunately, into the abdominal peritoneal cavity, and it's immediately life-threatening. Not subtle, immediate, pardon my By the end of the week, this is a feature to get used to. Did I mention I smoked for 40 years, 2 packs a day? Yeah, there's always a price to pay. So all of those things being part of it, okay, but eventually what has to be absorbed is absorbed, whatever it is, and obviously the rest passes out, and other waste products might accumulate. They don't put on really other vital structures part of digestive in here. The liver, I think if there was a way to incorporate it, but I'm not so clever. But effectively, all that stuff that's gone into the bloodstream, it's not the only way it gets there, goes to the heart. The heart effectively makes sure it pumps it. In the process of doing so, it's taking blood that requires more oxygen and gets it oxygenated at the lungs, get rid of the carbon dioxide. So we're doing respiration in that sense, but also getting rid of waste products. And then furthermore, why we show the intricacy of being the kidney being associated, the blood vessels go through there, and we can further cleanse the blood, getting rid of other waste products, getting rid of other toxins, the same way the lung does it, the same way the GI tract. That's why I wanted to say liver in there, because that would show how toxins get basically put into the bloodstream, but eventually make their way by something called bile into the alimentary canal so we can excrete it. But that's a whole digestive lecture, and that's an AP2. The big deal is they're all associated. If one goes bad, if your kidneys don't work properly, it's going to cause impact your lungs, it's going to impact all of these structures. Okay, it's going to impact the heart. We call CPR cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Because if the lungs aren't functioning, if someone has late stage emphysema and things can't get out or get in, it's going to cause backup pressures into the heart. It's going to make the heart less efficient. Fluid's not going to get to the kidneys to drain. We call it multi-system failure. And that's something you see a lot as folks get older or folks fail for other reasons. Maybe some significant illness, maybe cancer, maybe some underlying disease that just has overcome. That's why these little diagrams are to me are very relevant. It's at least giving you understand it's all connected. It's very rare that something occurs in a major system like that doesn't have a significant impact on other systems. That's all lab. We don't have to do that. Don't have to do that. Just about done. Don't have to do that. Like I said, if you're uncertain, if you're unclear the distinction between a visceral and parietal layer, ask me. There are 2 linings: parietal on the wall, visceral on the organ. They have moist. They're called serous, and that's because those things inside you don't know it are constantly moving. Everything's moving. In order for them to move, they have to be lubricated. And we don't want something real thick and sticky like mucus. We have serous. Okay. Mostly liquid, but just a tiny hint of lubrication that goes along with it. All those things. Just to give you a clue about those things, do look at the systems and see what they're involved with and what they're composed of. They're different roles. I don't have to read it to you. There's a nice little chart at the end. I mean, and that's where I bust through something like that. You know what's where, if you can. The best time to start learning about that is now, knowing that the liver and the pancreas and the gallbladder and the different structures that are in digestive. The respiratory is not just the lungs alone. We have to have the way to get starts to the nasal cavity and works its way there. Urinary is not just the kidneys, but we have to find a way to get the urine out. This is called the urinary tract. Ureters, bladder, and urethra, etc. All of those different structures, at least try to have some degree of familiarity with. I mean, you get muscles are muscles. We're not. You'll get plenty of chance in the lab to name them. And then this is the last part of this chapter, which I don't enjoy doing. Again, nobody laughed. Nobody laughed. None of you guys who qualifies, none of you are on Medicare, I wager. It's okay. It's coming. I give up. So, and it's all the time. I mean, these are pretty obvious. They're mostly laundry listed. I'm not going to ask you about them because it bothers me. Okay. All the things that happen with hair absence or changes. Okay. And it's funny, the wrinkling is things, and I told the other class, I mean, do what makes you, when people feel, a lot of people want to look good and feel good. If you, somebody, once they start with Botox, you got to continue with it. So if you're going to, I mean, that's a choice you make, that's your choice, but understand there's certain consequences that are associated with it. And maybe, perhaps the science will improve over time. I see nothing wrong with it. Okay. You have to make, a lot of people feel better when they look better. Their appearance is very important. I mean, you know how important is me, my clothing and fashion and everything. Most of my garments came from, have that, they have the little logo on them, all those different ones that they have. Mine, I can take the logo on it. Mine say Goodwill. I was at the thrift store last night. Never can tell when you run into a bargain. I found a sealed Seen It Deluxe Star Trek edition. Yeah, I mean, you can find some buyers for that, like on eBay and Amazon and stuff like that. Yeah. Just saying. Treasure hunting. So my wife and I like to do that. Okay. And so all of those things, you become, particularly why high blood pressure. Here's the reason why we see it with aging. Those tubes stretch and expand. They're flexible. Over time, they stiffen. It's like what you do when you want to blow up a balloon, you stretch it a little bit. Okay. I mean, that's what you would do with it. Okay. As opposed to, unless you have some device that can blow it up more easily for you. Those kinds of things. Blood vessels, as you get older, do not have that luxury whatsoever anymore. So you have to be wary about that. And it's not like the fat disappears. The fat goes in other areas. So your percentage of fat increases because things that are not being used, whether it's muscle that's no longer being used, eventually it changes to fat. Arthritis is everywhere. You don't have to worry about it. You're going to get it. By the time you're 70, 75, 80 years old, you're going to have arthritis. If you're an athlete, you're going to have it sooner. Okay, because anytime you hurt yourself, if there's bleeding into a joint, by definition, it will become arthritic. Blood erodes the cartilage. It doesn't happen, maybe it'll take 10, 25, 30 years. It will happen. Even for someone who's relatively not, if you just twist an ankle, that type of thing. And again, the elevated pressure, chronic high blood pressure, a lot of people take medicines for it. The same thing. Type 2 diabetes, or diabetes is very complex. I could do a whole course on it, probably a 2-semester course on it. The biggest problem that we see today is the type 2 used to be called maturity onset. It's not so much because there isn't insulin, it's because the receptors have become unable to process the insulin. The biggest thing we're seeing is in young folks, younger than you. Our lifestyles have become very sedentary. I mean, I was guilty of that. I was fortunate not to be a diabetic either. That ran in my family. So activity, diet, this lifestyle. I mean, we're so computerized and things like it's just different. How many jobs people have? They're just sitting all day, working from home on their computer, as opposed to getting out and doing it. It's a problem. Gaming and stuff. And I mean, it's hello pot. This is kettle. I didn't see the inside of a gym until I was 55 years old. And I mean, now I really enjoy going there. And for me, it's cardiac fitness. I'm 74. My dad didn't make it past 74. And he wasn't big like me in that sense. My dad was 6 feet tall, 32-inch waist, 182 pounds when he died. solid like a rock. Sometimes the cards are stacked against you. So, yeah, my sister and I had a good cry about that because he died on August 23rd recently. So it's well, why it sticks in my mind. Tissues change. These are called telomeres. We're trying to find a way to reverse those shortening of the chromosomes. And maybe you heard about them. Your metabolism is slower. All of these things. And yes, it's not that it's going to come. They would make it seem like it's better. It's good that they said some where they're dementia, Alzheimer's. There's lots of different types of dementia, and it varies. Unfortunately, we see it more and more. There's some underlying things that are part of it that are, well, I'm fortunate. My mom lived to be 93, and she was driving until she was 86. She really didn't show signs of dementia until she was 88, 89 years old. Her mom died when she was nearly 93 and didn't show any signs of it. There's variations. God bless you. Unfortunately, my dad didn't live long enough to demonstrate that. So and it isn't always hereditary factors. I'm a big proponent of use it or lose it. So this is why I'm here. It helps to use my mind. And that's everything in this chapter. Thank goodness it's done. I can introduce the next chapter. We're getting into science. I can't tell you how excited.